Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we are going to paint a pumpkin, well, sketch a pumpkin using pens and Inktense pencils because I had a couple viewers, one wanted to see a pumpkin and one wanted to see Inktense, and I thought that would work for Inktober. So I'm going to start off with a black a black Pitt pen. You can use Micron or any other waterproof pen you have, and I'm sketching kind of a squashed oval, and now I am sketching in a stem, which is basically a couple parallel lines, and I'm putting just some ridges in them to kind of give you that that texture the stock has. I am also kind of very, very gently sketching in the segments of the pumpkin. So this is actually kind of a gourd. It is a gourd. I mean, I bought it in a bin called gourds at the supermarket, so I guess it's a gourd. But it's the same technique for drawing a pumpkin. Plus, I can set this right on my desk on a box in front of me and be able to look at it and examine it as I'm sketching. And I think that's a really great technique if you have something physically in front of you that you can sketch, because you can pick it up, you can look at it, you can really examine it and make sure that you're sketching accurately. Now, I did not speed this up quite so much. This took me about 15 minutes in real time to sketch, so I'm just speeding up it a little bit more than usual. I sketched a little cast shadow under the pumpkin, and I'm using a cross-hatching technique to add a little shadow there. I will go ahead and add some of my Inktense on top of that, but I like to have the strong pen lines as well. Now remember, well, I don't know if you're following along on my Inktober journey, but my goal for Inktober is to help me sketch with more accuracy and more speed. So that's what I'm trying to go for. I know some people are doing very elaborate, gorgeous ink drawings and ink sketches in their Inktober projects, but I have a very specific goal that I'm trying to achieve, and that's what you're seeing here. I'm toning my sketch with a kind of a golden oguri color pencil here, just using the edge of it. You could also use Inktense blocks for this. You don't have to have the pencils. You could actually use any watercolor pencil you want. But the benefit of the Inktense is that once you have wet it, it turns to ink, and when it dries, it is permanent. So, or indelible, I should say. These will fade, so they're not permanent in that sense, but they're indelible, meaning you're not going to re-wet them. And in the crevices, I'm going in with a darker yellow-orange to kind of build a little depth, and also the color is different on the insides of those creases. And there's also some green speckles, so I'm throwing in some green speckles and some green on the stems. Now I have this kind of reddish brown color that is nice and earthy and rich, and I added that onto the stem as well because the green I chose was a little bit vibrant for what I really was going for. Now anytime I'm using these Inktense pencils or any sort of watercolor pencil and I want to have a shadow, I'll like kind of push the tip of my brush to where I want the shadow to be, and it will just push that pigment out and give me a lighter spot in the center. But I will be doing a little lifting on the segments of the gourd to help it feel a little bit rounder, and you'll see that in a minute. So what I did was I just kind of squeezed out some water and cleaned my brush a little bit, and then I am just adding water to the middle and lifting it off, and you can see I get those nice brighter reflections. So now I'm going right in on the damp paper, and this is my Jane Davenport art journal, so it's like a 90-pound hot press paper, kind of like a mixed media paper, kind of smooth, and I am going in right on the damp paper and drawing these speckles because they are pretty defined on the pumpkin. You'll see at the end, or you can scroll back to the beginning of the video, or I'll have a photo up on my Instagram or blog and you can kind of see what I mean. So I wanted those to go right down on the wet paper because that's going to grab more pigment and give me a stronger contrast. And now I'm building up some more with that orange yellow. So I dried my paper, and now this is a technique I absolutely love. I am picking up the Inktense pencil with the tip of my water brush, and there's no reason you can't use a brush and a bucket of water. I just happen to have all my Inktense pencils in this beautiful pencil case that my friend Jacqueline gave me, and I keep a few water brushes in there too. So I'm also using the Inktober challenge to help me use some supplies that have been gathering dust. I don't feel good about having supplies, whether they were a gift or whether I bought them. I do not feel good about having supplies sit unused on my shelf. It feels very wasteful, and I feel I feel badly about that. So this is also a great opportunity for me to grab some supplies that I don't use very often, either ones that I paid good money for or ones that I have from gifts and whatnot. So I think you can approach this challenge in many ways to make the most of it in your situation. If you've been following me for any amount of time with my watercolor tutorials, you know that I prefer to work with a limited palette, and it's not always the same colors each time, but once I choose a few colors, I like to just stick with them. And that's why I didn't go ahead and grab a darker green when I realized that the green I picked was way too light and bright. So rather than grabbing another color, I'm taking that reddish brown color and I am mixing it with the green just by using my water brush to pick up those two colors and mix them together. So I'm getting a much darker color. And I can do the same thing with the brown and the orange and get myself a darker kind of rusty orange color. And honestly, especially when you're doing Inktober, because a lot of people are doing just like ink and water for their ranges of color, which is awesome, you'll realize that it's really more about your value than your color. So if, like, I painted a black cat in watercolor yesterday, but we actually used every color but black, so you know the cat was more like purpley blue, but you still get the impression of a black cat because the values are correct. So while you are sketching, don't worry so much about having just the right color, worry about having the right value, because that's going to be a skill that serves you so much better. And it can help you. You could take a snapshot of whatever you're sketching and you could change it to black and white on your computer, or sometimes right in your phone. I think there's like I know if you took a picture and you played with the Instagram filters, and you wouldn't even have to upload it to Instagram, but you could try it with like the different filters to like change it to black and white, or just slide the saturation completely down to nothing. That will make it into grayscale and you'll be able to see where the darks and the lights are. So that's a wonderful free technique that you can do, and you probably, if you have a smartphone, you got the capacity right in your pocket to do that, and it's a really helpful tool, and it's a lot easier than taking a picture, uploading it to your computer and doing it in image software. So for my shadow, again, I didn't want to grab another color. I first tried that reddish brown, but ooh, that was way too red. So what I decided to do was go ahead and mix some of that green right in there. Green and red are opposite on the color wheel, so what happens when you mix those opposites together is they neutralize each other. So you're going to get it grayed down or desaturated. So it may turn more brown, it may turn more gray, but it's going to be much less vibrant and much more appropriate for a shadow. And here I'm going in and drying it again because I want to do a little more pen work. And I've got my favorite gel pen is a Uniball Signo Broad. If you want a finer tip, there's a Uniball Signo Angelic, which is a finer tip. I like these Gel Impact broad pens because I feel like it just lets out the perfect amount of ink. I get that nice bold punch of highlight, and that works really well for me, and I have not had an issue clogging. I know some people say that it clogs if you don't let your paper dry long enough, but I find if I hit it with a heat tool for a few seconds, the paper that is, I don't have an issue. But if you are having that issue, that might be why. And somebody did share with me, and I'm so sorry I can't remember the name, but on my blog, somebody shared a tip that if you take your heat tool and you heat up the tip of the pen and then you kind of color it off on your hand, that will help it go again. Just don't burn yourself and do it at your own risk, because I personally haven't had an issue and haven't had to try it, but that was a tip that somebody offered. And here what I'm doing is using paint over pens, which are an opaque acrylic, very matte acrylic pen, and almost like a chalkboard pen, and I'm adding some more body and highlight that way. I'm just using those really pale peach, yellow, and white pens. You could also use gouache paint if you wanted to. Honestly, it's a great excuse to dig through your supply bin and see what you have and see what will work. I can't think of a better excuse to try different medias together than a challenge like this, because, well, so what if you don't like it? There's always tomorrow. There's always tomorrow to try another pen, right? I think Clarice sang that way better than I did. But see, this is what happens when I don't speed up my videos 4 times. I've only got it speeded up about 1 time, and I have extra time to sing. Nobody needs to hear that. I hope you're all having a great weekend. We're almost to the end of this. I'm just kind of going in and layering in a little more the Inktense, where I felt like I needed a little bit more color on some of the greens. And that's pretty much it. You can always go back in and add more black pen if you felt like you lost some contrast. You can deepen up your colors. Remember, with the Inktense, you're not going to disturb anything underneath. So all of these pens I've used so far have been permanent. So I can keep layering and layering and layering until I'm happy. There you can see the actual pumpkin. I think it looks pretty close. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.